The very first time that Dick said turn over for, I think, my first shot, I think I was in the pink leather at that time. Wonderful costumes, weren't they? I started to blink. He had to stop me blinking. He said turn over, and I was so frightened that I just did turn. My stomach turned over, actually.
And Dick Lester said, well, you can double for the good-looking one, Paul McCartney. But first of all, he says, can you wrestle with a tiger? I didn't know whether he was being serious or not.
Ringo is in no danger whatsoever. The set is actually divided by a sheet of very thick, inch-thick armoured glass, right? So that there's that much glass between Ringo and the tiger.
Cliff was a real stuntman, and he had bottle, OK? The thing is, when I got out to Nassau, I realised I'd have to jump 20 feet off a tree. And I didn't tell anybody I've got vertigo, you see, because I wouldn't have got the job. So when I got up in the tree, what did I say? I said, just before action, I said, I got change. He said, what's the problem? I said, I'm left-handed. I got to sit on your branch.
The first shot of the film was we're on the boat because Ringo was tied to this operating table, and then Eleanor Braun comes on, cuts him loose, and he dives off the boat into the water.
Oh, gosh, what I recall is thinking I was going to die.
Let's see if we can find it. Right!
I'm not a very good swimmer, and no one had foreseen that. Of course, when you jump in, you go down quite a lot.
That dive was a stuntman would quail, let alone anybody else, 25 feet down into the water.
What happened was that when we dived down, the cape that I was wearing came over and made a complete ceiling.
I hate those black rubber things. Unfortunately, the cape sort of blew over her head. Poor Eleanor must have been a bit scared. And Ringo, I think, was brilliant because he didn't swim.
I said, why didn't you say? He said, well, when the director shouts action, you have to do it, you know.
And then we had Mel, who was their road manager. We saw him swimming towards us. That's the scene where he comes out of the sea.
As the cross-channel swimmer, which is wonderful, actually.
A barracuda or stingray was behind him, and we were yelling him to come quickly as possible, because in a clear sea you could see this black fish behind him.
In the early 60s, that spirit of I can do anything if I want to do it was absolutely endemic.
Who's going to be mad enough, you know, up in the Austrian Alps in the middle of winter, right, to get into this ice-cold water, right, at 6 o'clock in the morning, right, with a pair of swimming trunks on, right? Hey, Mal, do you fancy a gig? You know, and he could, you know, it was like it was dangerous. Hypothermia, they just covered him in, like, so much grease and whatever, you know, and then when he had to do it again, okay, take two, oh no.
Cliveden was the stately residence of Lord Astor, and when we were there, could have been only a couple of years at the most since the Profumo scandal, where all that took place. And I can remember standing in the marble hall of this place with a double staircase coming down and the entire unit standing there, and this old Lord Astor, you know, the one that Mandy Rice Davies said he would, wouldn't he? Comes tottering down this staircase, and John's looking up, and he said, well, he said, I must say, it's a fair pad you've got here, Lord Asthma. At the back of the gardens, there's a miniature form of long water, like the long water at Versailles now, with a carp pond, if you like, but a very long, extended bit. And somebody, for some reason or other, suggested having a race round it. And, of course, the Beatles, being younger and fitter than anyone else, won it. And the prize was a bottle of champagne, of the noble Lord Champagne. They said, no thanks, we'd rather have a sniff from his oxygen bottles.
We were filming in a bowl where there were 3 or 4 resort hotels. We were all staying in one of the larger ones, and it had a sort of beer cellar, which had a resident three-piece band. And my assistant director, a man called Clive Reed, had a birthday. The band played for a while, and then we turfed them off and said, that's fine, goodbye. And Paul got onto drums, and I went onto the piano, and John and George took turns. And it just started, and I hadn't played for some time, and I certainly didn't have their encyclopedic knowledge of all the Buddy Holly songs and that period of rock and roll. But I would sort of stumble along as best I can, pretending that they were 12-bar blues, and I would just sort of thump away and hope nobody would hear. But it just kept going, and I think we played till about 3 a.m, at which point we all sort of drunkenly went to bed, and I woke up and my sheets were covered in blood because I hadn't played for so long. But all the tips of my fingers had cracked from the effort, and I was sort of bleeding all over it. But it was one of those great times, and I remember Neil Aspinall saying to me not too long ago, he said, do you realize you're probably one of the only musicians in the world that's actually played a full set with the Beatles?